Hello and welcome to Fresh Take from What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret.
And this is Amy. Today we are talking to Kristen Meinzer and Jolenta Greenberg. Together they host the podcasts By the Book and How to Be Fine. The current season of How to Be Fine is all about the loneliness epidemic and friendship quandaries, from jealousy to BFF breakups. I can't wait to talk about this. Welcome, Kristen and Jolenta.
Thank you so much for having us.
So tell us a little bit about the podcast, How to Be Fine, how you came to be doing it, and what the raison d'etre, as we used to say in the theater, is of How to Be Fine.
It started back in the day as a podcast called By the Book, and we were exploring the self-help and wellness industry by living by self-help books religiously for 2 weeks at a time.
Love
and
it.
doing like a reality show-esque reporting back on how it affected our lives and whether or not the advice actually worked. Eventually, we ended up being lucky enough to write a book about our experience called How to Be Fine. And we changed the show to How to Be Fine to be able to focus on the betterment and wellness world as a whole and not just the book part. So we're exploring all sorts of trending topics in regard to wellness and self-help, trying on different advice from experts. And as you mentioned earlier, this season, we're really focusing on all aspects of like friendship and loneliness.
So you recently had me on an episode of How to Be Fine, and we talked about being the happy to help friend.
Yes.
Because there is one in every group.
Right.
And this is like, the one who's always looking at Google Maps and, come on, guys, our reservation's in 15 minutes. The one who made the reservation in the first place, the one who means you ever see
Right.
each other as a group at all. That's that friend.
Yes.
And we all either have that friend or we are that friend. And I'm wondering, in your lives, are you that person in your friend groups?
I am not.
I'm not either.
But I think Kristen has a different answer.
I might be that person. As a matter of fact, Jolenta and I, so what we do on our show, we'll speak with an expert like you, Amy, who has written all about people pleasing. We had you on the show to talk about that. You gave us tips about how to maybe not people please so much with our friends. And then the next episode, Jolenta and I live by the tips from our guest and record ourselves. So Jolenta and I actually lived by all the tips you gave us, Amy.
Oh, I
And
love this.
it comes out very clearly that, yes, I'm that person. I am the person who is overscheduled, who is coordinating a lot of things, keeping a lot of balls in the air, and
Right.
feeling incredibly guilty if I drop anything or miss anything. And so, yeah, we lived by your tips. And I don't want to tell everybody what happens there, but spoiler, I don't ask for help, even though that's the first thing you tell us to do if we're juggling too much.
We just recorded an episode based on Amy's book about people pleasing, and it's a super interesting and it's a messy topic. What does it mean? Is it good? Is it bad?
Right.
And I think I am this person in the friend group generally. I'm definitely Amy sometimes refers to me as the idea cannon. I'm not the greatest executor of plans, but I'm definitely like, we should all get together and wear bunny suits and hop through town or whatever. I have a lot of ideas.
You're just shooting them out.
I'm shooting them out. I'm not sure and sometimes Amy, thank God I have Amy in my life to occasionally be like, let's not do that thing. That's a really bad idea because they're not all gems. Let's be honest.
Right.
But I think it's interesting, and I wonder if you found this, Kristen, the idea that this sort of, this person's always people pleasing and putting stuff together, but that work is actually valuable for people. It's nice to have a person who's making sure that the cousins party happens and the cousins get a chance to spend time together, or the friends do get together. And doing that work, I think sometimes when it's labeled as, here she goes again, we really push back on the negative connotation of that, because there's a lot of greatness in being a person who organizes people and makes things happen.
Yeah. And I will say that on the flip side of that, though, even though I think it's great to have somebody in the circle who's organizing everybody and making sure the birthday party happens, I will say that sometimes it's driven by hypercompetency. Sometimes it's driven by just want to have my ducks in a row. I want things organized. But sometimes, at least in the past for me, it was also driven by, I just want to be liked. I want people to, feel like I'm doing everything and taking care of them. I don't want them to feel like I'm not trying hard enough. I want them to see me stepping up to the plate with our friendship. And that's definitely been a problem of mine in the past. I don't think it's my current predicament. I think my current predicament is I really like people, but sometimes I just put too much on the calendar. And in our episode we recently recorded, Jolenta, as you recall, at the very top of the episode, I'm like, this is my week's calendar for socializing, not my 6 jobs I have, but just my social calendar. And it was maybe 12 items on it for 1 week after just getting back from a road trip with girls. And so it was a lot of stuff.
So it turns out that there's a term for this work when it happens in a family structure, in an extended family, called kin keeping. And I hadn't heard of this word until just a few months ago. There's a New York Times article about it, and we did an episode on that. And it's a new idea for me that this work does have to happen in friend groups too. It's work. It's not recognized as such. So here she goes again, sending out a Halloween thing to everybody, right? And yet we need that to happen. I'm thinking of a group of extended friends I have right now, where we have one person who's like, we haven't seen each other. Let's get a dinner on the calendar. How are these dates? How are that dates? Let's do a trip. Let's do this. And it's not like everything she throws out is successful, but we literally wouldn't see one another anymore if it weren't for this person. And then, like you said, Margaret, it's then put back on it like, oh, here she goes again. She's that one. It's like, thank God for that one.
Yeah.
Jolenta, did you have somebody like that in your life?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I'm very lucky that I have a few people in like different friend groups who do take on that labor, like whether or not it results in something fun. They're doing like almost administrative work of getting everyone together, making sure everyone's on the same page, figuring out people's schedules. Yeah. Like I'm very lucky.
So is the solution to just make sure you have somebody like that? Because I think the problem is then there's some resentment. My college-aged kid is this person in his friend group, and he's the one who made the dinner reservation and knows what time the game starts and knows what time they need to be getting the check so they can get to the game. And he's that person because he's my child. But I think in that is like, but I don't want to do that all the time. And how do you stop? That's what we're talking about. It's when you hold this responsibility and you want other people to do it.
Yeah. One great piece of advice you gave us, Amy, on our show was you don't have to make a big group announcement or send out a giant group email. You can just take one trusted friend in your group and say, hey, can you just organize the next few get-togethers? Or can you host the next thing at your house the next time we're watching the football game or the next time we're going out to dinner? Can you be the one to just start that thread going? I'll weigh in. It's not that I'm going to just like ghost everybody, but can you just pick up the ball the next few times? And then gradually, maybe that person will do it more, or you can ask other people in the group to do it more. And they're probably not going to do it as much as you as a people pleaser and very competent person, but just having other people from time to time step in. I thought that was great advice, Amy.
Yeah. Being okay with communicating what's going on, even if it's like a building simmering resentment or frustration, finding constructive ways to communicate it and ask for help is important.
We were saying in that episode, you don't want to do the whole like Instagram, like I'm setting a boundary, everyone, right?
Yeah,
like I have something to
like
say.
Some weird announcement.
I won't be doing this
like
anymore.
Cryptic. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because everybody will be baffled. What are you even talking about? I thought you liked setting up potluck dinners.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, we were talking on our episode on this topic, and I think that taking the pressure off it for other people and yourself. And one of the things that I've been doing with my friend group is, okay, the third Thursday of the month, we have a little local spot where there's snacks and drinks, and we'll go. Who's ever around can go, and we'll put the word out. And there might be 2 of us, or there might be 13 of us, but it's not quite like we all have to sync our calendars. There's this one time we're going to do it, and taking the pressure off a little bit and making it feel a little bit more like we have this opportunity and it's looser. It's not quite the same amount of pressure as, okay, this is our one chance to get together, and the one who didn't show up never shows up. We have feelings about it.
Oh, that's such a great idea.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
It's
and
just
super
like
smart.
a monthly open house. Everybody come if you can, if you want to, at this time or sometime in this window.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we might all text the group chat and be like, oh, we forgot it was midterms week. Nobody's coming. Okay, we're not doing it this month because it's not quite as heavy as the like, it's a dinner reservation and I put it on my credit card. And if you don't
So,
show up, you're
yeah.
going to charge me $25. It's just a little bit looser. And Amy was talking about the idea. Is it demand sensitivity, Amy? Is that the idea?
demand
Explain
sensitivity.
that, because I felt like that
Oh, that's a good call.
really
Yeah.
spoke to me.
Somebody introduced this to me in one of the podcasts I was on, the Talking to Teens podcast. He said, I think you're talking about demand sensitivity, because I was like, people pleasing doesn't quite get it exactly what I think I'm about. It's that when somebody mentions like, oh, it would be so fun if we had a dinner like this every month, using this as an example, right? Like, wouldn't this be fun if we made this a monthly thing? That there's something in some people, me, sounds like maybe you too, Kristen, that's like, like assignment, set up potluck dinner, that just you're the one who will make it happen. Somebody
Right.
tosses an idea. Wouldn't it be fun if we got bunny suits and hopped through town? There's just some part of me that's okay. Like, I think
You're
there's
like
a
Googling
costume
bunny
shop 2
suits,
towns over.
yeah.
Even just in my head, like, that's something I have to do. If my husband muses about, wouldn't it be nice to get together with all of my cousins this summer, that I hear that as go make that happen. Even if it was somebody just saying, wouldn't it be nice? But again, you do want somebody to be that person. Wouldn't it be fun if we got bunny suits and hopped through town? Somebody will like go get the bunny suits and do it, right? Or else it's all just
Yeah.
nice ideas and you don't have
And,
friends
I
anymore.
guess ideally, it switches off. Is
Right.
sort of what it would be like in a dream scenario, where different things motivate different people in the friend group to organize it, but usually it ends up falling on the person who everyone relies on to organize.
And I think we often set up the podcast with, is this really a problem? And I think your take is, this is a problem, like that we do feel this loneliness. We are separated. We understand there is this mysterious and immense power of female friendships. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I don't think it's always a problem. I think it's a problem if the organizer, if the very competent person, if they're starting to feel resentful, then it's a problem. If the person still is getting great joy out of it, if they're just a Martha Stewart at heart who is hyper organized and likes to do everything to the nines, then let them have at it. Let them have that enjoyment of controlling every detail and being totally on top of everything. But if the person who is putting things together doesn't enjoy the control of it, but is just trying to see friends and is getting resentful because they're the only ones who is organizing time with friends, then that's when it's a problem. I think we all react differently to the same situation. And that's one case where some people love it and some people may have started off loving it and then start to feel like, for crying out loud, will somebody else step up to the plate? Please, for crying out loud.
And I think the pandemic played a role too. I find before the pandemic, I was out 2 or 3 nights a week. And gosh, I really noticed that I lost my outside legs during the pandemic. And I find that the barrier, also my kids are getting older. So I think when my kids were littler, it was like, we're at the birthday party together and we're at this together. And now my kids are driving off on their own or doing their own thing. And I do find that I have to make much more of an active choice to see friends than what maybe felt like a more passive choice before.
Yeah. Now you're having to schedule like dinners with your own kids at this point sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
exactly.
right. Let's talk a little bit about making new friends in adulthood, because I feel like part of the reason this work is so important is because you need friends and it's not as easy as it used to be. Like you were saying, Margaret, I think I used to think just showing up at school, volunteering for every committee, standing on the sidelines of soccer, I was guaranteed to see this woman that I really like twice a week at my kid's soccer game until they graduated. And now I'm like, oh, she's nice. And the
Whatever
last thing in
happened
the
to
world
her?
I'll do is, let's get a date on the calendar, because I'm not that kind of person. So I'm wondering, let's talk about making new friends in adulthood and how you have found success doing that.
One thing you just mentioned there are what some of our guests have called pillar institutions, the things that you go back to again and again. And so when we go to the weekly soccer game, when we go down to the dorm room cafeteria every day, when we're going to the same place every single day, school, clubs, whatever, we're more likely to make friends. Just the regularity of seeing the same people day after day. And one thing that I have found to be successful is making sure that I've created those in my adult life. Something that's just very simple that a lot of our guests have said, be a regular. Go 3 times a week to the same coffee shop or to the same dog park or somewhere else that you
I got
would
some
want
gym
to
buddies
visit
now.
every week regularly. Yeah. And I thought that was great. I think another tip that has worked really well for me, at least, is just with the friends I have, just have them invite other people too. Eventually, we can expand our friend circle just by tapping into the friends we have, reaching out to people that we haven't seen for a long time. Literally last week, I became reacquainted with somebody I was on a study abroad with when I was a sophomore in college. This is a long time ago.
Oh my
And
gosh.
we started becoming pen pals again. And so we can reach into our past, we can reach into our existing friend circles. And one thing, to go back to our earlier conversation, that big organizer, the one who has all of the friends, who has the calendar, that person can be the best introducer for you, to introduce you to other people, because that person tends to know everybody.
Yeah.
I was
I know
shocked
exactly who that person is in my town. I call her the mayor, but I'm like, you got to
Yeah,
make friends
yeah.
with her. She knows everybody. She has all the events. Go make
Yes.
friends with the mayor,
They
and then you'll
also
be
like
fine.
always have a nickname that people give them.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of
Like
somebody
Mr.
I know. Like,
Popular. Like,
I'm thinking of the person I know who does this, and she doesn't even live anywhere near me, but she's the connector, and you should meet this person. I'm in town for 12 hours.
right.
That person is not on social media. And I have found there to be sort of a correlation between people who prioritize in-person contact and who are extremely social and who don't bother with the social media peripheral, I know what you're up to thing. Have you seen that to be true?
Yeah. I mean, more and more, I think, especially in recent weeks, months, years, where different social media companies are owned by different people that maybe not everybody agrees with the owners of those companies, or who they're politically aligning themselves with, or the terms of service. So more and more people I have found are just opting out of that. And then
Yeah.
also maybe opting out for their own mental health, because sometimes those social media platforms can really feed into compare and despair, which is something a lot of our guests have talked about this season, and how that can hurt friendships, that compare and despair, where people are maybe using social media not just to update their friends, but to look at and feel bad about themselves. And so, yeah, more people seem to be opting out of social media to a certain extent.
And I'm wondering about people. We've had conversations like this, and I often admit on the podcast, like, I don't relate to that at all. And I am a hyper social person, like an overly social, like I check out at the grocery store and know the checker's entire life history by the time my groceries are bagged, and like we're
Kristen's
making
the same
plans to
way.
like
Yeah.
eat
Yeah.
and brew together.
Yes,
Like
that's me.
And I am not.
that's
Same.
Amy is not like that. And so maybe Amy and Jolenta speak a little bit to like the challenges that maybe we don't see as much of. How do you make social connections if that's like an area of
Right.
struggle for you?
So that's like peripheral contact. And
Right.
that is also important. There was a study, Marley Bauer, who researches loneliness. She discovered that the people who did okay during and after the pandemic were the people who had these real strong in-person friendships to depend on. And the people who struggled more were the people who had more peripheral contact. And I think that was kind of me, that I relied on bumping into somebody at yoga and saying hi, being up to date with somebody on social media. Like, I know what people are doing, but then when you
Right.
didn't see people, and then when that
Yeah.
was over, those peripheral contact relationships didn't make the jump.
They didn't
Yeah.
stand the
So
test of time.
Yeah. And so I think, yes, Margaret has a particular gift of drawing out whoever she's talking to and getting them talking. Like, I think I'm like available, but I don't go after that person. And so
Right.
maybe it's that you're not making new friends because that peripheral contact stays peripheral. And there's something about what you do that takes it to another level.
Yeah. Yeah. I have found in those situations, shared interest is super helpful. Like if you start going to the craft store for the craft you like, or the meetup that does the game you love, you have those peripheral friendships, but because there's that little extra added, like this is something we know we're both passionate about, that can help bridge that gap and take those sort of peripheral relationships into a friendship.
That's super interesting, because having kids who struggle socially, that is something that they recommend a lot for kids, is do
Right.
Legos together, because the difficulty of I can sit on a couch and just have an eye contact filled conversation about our day is challenging.
Right.
But if we're sitting together and doing Legos, whether or not we're having a conversation, that's feeding a social need that we're doing it in communion with another person.
Right.
But
Mhm.
there's not just this expectation of we have to. My niece came over recently and she was like, "What are we doing today?" And I'm like, "We're doing it. We're sitting on the couch, like chatting. Like, this is all I
Mhm.
need." I think that it's very worthwhile to acknowledge that people have different set points with what they want their socializing to look like. And I really like that idea of shared activity as something that
Mhm.
might really bridge a social gap for children or adults.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something a lot of our guests have talked about, especially if the shared activity is physical, going on a walk together, doing something that might have a little bit of peril or danger or fun to it, even if it's just mini golf, because
Or like a
The
roller
perils
coaster.
of mini golf.
Yeah.
yes, but the actual activity, physically using our bodies helps us to be more engaged with who we're with, and it heightens certain emotions that we have. Let's say that moment of screaming because your ball lands in the water, that heightened emotion moment comes through in also how we connect to the person we're with, where that moment of friendship is heightened also in the moment. So
That makes
uh,
sense.
so physically interacting can be very useful if we want to bond with somebody new, and also making it hyper specific. So one thing that a number of guests have said, to piggyback off of what Jolenta was saying about have something with other people that's an activity, but make it as specific as possible. So if you're having a book club, don't put up a public notice saying I'm starting a book club. Say, I am starting a book club where we specifically read sci-fi books by women of color. And you will get way more responses the more specific your club is or your get together.
People who see themselves in that will really see themselves in that.
Right.
And they'll be far more likely to show up than if
Yeah.
it's something
More likely to
generalized.
respond. Yeah.
I've noticed living in New York City, there's many, because of social media, there are actually many there's something called City Girls Who Walk. And this woman has started this thing and it's become like our revolution. And we just walk in Central Park every Sunday, just come. And she gets 200 women to come. Amazing. But it's definitely aimed at, I just got here. I'm 25 years old. And I
Right.
look at those women. I'm like, I'm not going to go to City Girls Who Walk because I'm like,
'Cause
the
I'm a city
grandma.
woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, what's that? Whose mom is that? And then also on the other side, it's like silver sneakers, like active senior. It's like, that's not me either. And yet I find there is a weird gap for just about empty nester, that kind of thing. Re-entering this new phase kind of thing that is neither you just graduated or you have
Or
3
you're
grandchildren.
just starting your
Like,
family.
yeah, like where's the middle path? And I guess like I'm saying right now, there's a business idea here, but I have found that
Yeah,
sort
wait, you need to start a walking group,
of
clearly.
walking group, right?
I think I'm joining that club. Yeah.
Nanas Who
I'm
Walk.
joining
We'll
that.
join. Like,
Right. That is like we were supposed to have had the friends we need by now or something. And
right.
yet
Yeah,
there is
yeah.
still a need to make
There
new
is that
friends.
assumption of you're probably established, right? But that's
Although-
not always the case.
That's not
Lives
always the case.
change, people move away, like friendships peter out.
Although one thing that you are touching on, Amy, is something several of our guests have pointed out, which is intergenerational friendships are really good for us.
Yeah.
It's good for us to have friends who are much older and much younger. It keeps us in the loop on certain things. It gives us different kinds of wisdom to work with. It just lights up different parts of our hearts and brains being with people of different ages. Maybe not necessarily join the Girls Who Walk Club, but maybe another group that has a lot of women in their 20s might not be the worst thing in the world.
I feel
Or
like
it might be the most irritating thing.
I was thinking of that earlier when we were talking about something else, that I'm in a phase of my life where I have such a wide range of ages of friends. I have a close friend in their 80s. I have a close friend in their 30s. And it is really nice. And I think it kind of happened organically for me. I work and different things where I meet just a wide range of people, which is lucky. But I think being open to that intergenerational friendship. I have a friend whose closest friend, is like a 91-year-old who happens to live down the block, and they garden together. And I think that those intergenerational friendships, it's sometimes like they don't count for us. Oh, that's my young friend or that's my old friend. And that's not really the same as having peer friends. And I think at a certain age, like having those just unlabeled intergenerational friendships, I so agree, Kristen. I think it's a cool phase of life to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also honestly protects us against certain losses. I think about my husband's grandfather, who died a few years ago, he was just shy of his 103rd birthday when he died.
Wow.
If he didn't have intergenerational friendships, he'd have zero friends at all because everybody else his age was dead by the end. He was really a great model of make sure you have friends of different ages. And he was in a lawn bowls league with men who were 40 years younger than him, who all came to the funeral. And those guys who were 40 years younger were still in their 60s, but
True.
but he was so grateful to have those people in his life.
And you've also argued on your show that new friends, they bring benefits, and in some ways they can be better than childhood friends. So tell us about that.
Sometimes. One of the great things about new friends is they take you with no baggage. They didn't know you during that rough phase that like maybe you're not proud of, or just they take you at face value for what you are right now. There's no history. There's no, I know you always do this. It can be refreshing to be appreciated for who you are right in that moment versus who you've always been or what you've always meant to someone. There's sort of less pressure in needing to like fill a certain role with new friends. That can be really refreshing.
I love that. Again, I have a child who's in 11th grade now and has gone to school with the same kids since kindergarten. And I'm it's not easy. Like you puked on the rug when you were in first grade and like you're still the puker at high school graduation.
Yeah,
and I love that idea. They didn't know your weird ex. They don't know it's you do get to reinvent yourself in this life, and I really think that is important, the idea of like people who know you for who you are now.
Yeah. And people who can appreciate all the work that you put in to become the fully formed human you are at this point. Not that we're ever fully formed. We're hopefully always growing and evolving and so on. But to be appreciated for this moment and to connect over who you are and who I am, and never wonder like, God, that person, would I even be friends with them if I didn't go to second grade with them?
Yeah.
Would I even be friends with that person? And I'll say, frankly, I think some of them probably I wouldn't necessarily. But this person who I'm meeting now in this moment, we're choosing each other. And to be chosen is something so special and lovely. And it's not about circumstances. It's about I'm a fully formed human who chose you and you chose me.
That's lovely. Let's talk a little bit about what happens when one friend is a parent or has a child and the other friend does not. We did an episode about this. There was an article in New York Magazine about this, so I'll link to those things. But I want to hear your thoughts on that topic.
We definitely have thoughts. We did an episode about this. We talked with Ophira Eisenberg, who's a comedian who became a mother by surprise later in life. And she has a really interesting perspective about friends with kids. And one of the main things we learned is communicate with your friends with kids. I think a lot of people make assumptions on both sides.
Yes.
Parents, new parents, old parents, doesn't matter, make the assumption people don't want to be around their kids or they don't want to hear about their kids often. And people without kids make the assumption that like their friends are always going to be busy and always doing something with their kids. So there's no point in reaching out. And we start making assumptions and stop communicating with our friends.
Yeah. I have an old friend, known her for, a long time. She's my oldest friend. And she texted me in the middle of something like, oh, guess who just walked in? And she was at an event and just said like, oh, I figured you were going to be busy. And I should have invited you. It wasn't intentional, but it's just, it's that, right? Like, she wouldn't be able to come even if I invited her.
She has kids. She doesn't do this kind of stuff anymore.
5 years ago, that would have been true. And now it's less true. But how would she know that? Anyway, you can see how that can happen.
Yeah. And that's something else that Ophira was talking about is different seasons, different things are going to happen. Maybe the first 2 to 5 years of parenthood, just between the sleep deprivation, the potty training, the all-consuming trying to keep this human alive who's always walking into traffic and putting their fingers in things. It's just very overwhelming the first few years. And maybe that means I'm going to opt out a lot as the parent. But to just keep the lines of communication open and be honest and say, it's going to be rough the next few years. Please don't stop inviting me. I'm going to say no a lot. But I do promise you after this phase is done, which seems like it's never going to end, but it will come to an end to this particular phase. I will need you and our friendship. And I hope that we can still make sure that we see each other. But to accept that sometimes there's going to be little phases, like the time when your friend is in law school, you might not see them for 2 years.
Right.
The time when your friend has a newborn, you might not see them for a couple of years. That doesn't mean the friendship has to be over, and you can still, from time to time, even if it's just once or twice a year, ping them and tell them, hey, I'm thinking about you.
From the parent side, I am a believer that you should assume that people have zero interest in your children or your dog unless they prove otherwise.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's universal, but I find that just assume I don't want to pet your dog. I don't want it to jump on my lap. And I don't want to hear about how your kid is doing on the soccer team unless otherwise specified. Agree or disagree, Jolenta?
Oof. Sometimes agree, sometimes disagree. I think I like hearing about my friends' kids, but I do think the assumption is that if you are child-free, you don't want to hear it. But sometimes I just want to know what's going on in my friends' lives. And if all that's going on in their life is like my kid is hitting other kids at daycare, I want to know. Also, like the person asking how are things, they can be clear and be like, how are things? How's the kid? How's blah, blah, blah. But yeah, but like I speaking for myself only, am much more open to hearing about people's kids, I think, than they think.
I thought you were going to say then they're dogs.
I'm honestly probably more open to hearing about their dogs, but that's a me thing.
Yeah. Again, I think there's no right or wrong answer to this. Everybody's different, and we just have to keep our lines of communication open with people. I will say that one thing that I think is tough is if anybody becomes a one subject person.
Yes.
And if that's talking about baby Billy every single second of the day, or that's talking about their job and their
Right.
boss every second of the
There
day,
you go.
whatever that one subject is, if you become a one subject person, it's not as much fun.
It's
And
going to get old.
It happens
Yeah.
to all of us. Believe me, there are times with my husband's job where I'm like, I cannot listen to this anymore. You have been, and I
Right.
get it. It stinks. You're stuck in this horrible loop. And believe me, my husband feels it's a mutual agreement society. But there are times for all of us where it's like, oh my gosh. And the boss, and he's this. It's like, no, I know. He's been like this for 3 years. I've been hearing the
Yeah.
same stories.
Nothing's changed.
I know you're living it, but I think that's right. And I think that people do have really, and I'm child full. I am not childless. I have 3 of them at home. And I find that I have always had a low set point for wanting to hear that much about other people's kids or dogs. But
Yeah.
I think you're right. Absolutely. Jolenta, to say like it is personal and you can find ways to communicate. And also I think that some of this stuff happens naturally. Like my kids are now tweens and teens. And in fact, my friend who we did the When Your Friends Don't Have Kids episode with, this is
Mhm.
literally making me think we haven't talked in like 2 years. Like I have to pick up the phone and text her and say, hey, let's get together. Because I went dark for a couple of years when we were in some stuff and the
Yeah.
pandemic and whatever else happened.
And if you're the friend, like my friend who was like, oh, I didn't know you were going to be able to come. Like I definitely went through flaking, not showing up for stuff at the last second because I was going through some stuff. Right.
Right.
And
Mhm.
wasn't at that time intentional enough in my communication. Like you were saying before, Kristen, about like, I'm in a moment. I'm not gone forever.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
feel your friendship. It's keeping me going right now, but I'm in the soup and don't
Yeah.
give up on me. Instead, I just ghosted. And you can see when you're on the other side and you don't have an explanation for it. What's that psychological thing called when you fill in the blanks? We love a story. Our brains love story.
Right,
And
yeah,
so if we're
yeah.
not given a story, we'll make one up
Yeah.
that fits the pieces together. And that I was not interested in being friends anymore. It becomes the
Right.
story
It's
on the
it's
receiver's
the easy
end.
narrative to jump to
Yeah.
when people flake a bunch of times.
I think particularly if it's because I was a friend with kids who was going through some stuff with my kids that was just taking all of my attention. And this is a friend without kids who understands that. I think it's easier for that misunderstanding to happen, perhaps. Although I guess
Right.
it could be,
Yes, very
be
much
two
so.
parents. I'm a parent and I see she's going through some stuff and I guess we're not friends anymore. That could still happen, even if you understand why it's happening without really careful communication around it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
We talk about operating from your place of maximum generosity, that like it's always good. I just got a text this morning from like old friends and another friend of ours something happened with, and good news. Oh, did you see his article about her? And suddenly we're back in touch and it's, hey, it's been too long. It's great to hear from you. And just operating from the point of view of, okay, we fell out of touch for a little while. And I don't know who dropped the ball, but here we are, like coming into our friendships from that place of, hey, we like each other. We might have to do a little bit of like, sorry, my kid was sick and I was kind of out of it for this period of time, but trying to not bring into it, we haven't talked for too long. I'm sure they hate me now. I'm sure they think
Right.
I'm selfish, terrible. And just taking it from the point of view of, hey, it's great to be back in touch. Here our roads are meeting again. And isn't that great?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that makes all of life easier if we assume the best in others and come from a place of trying to have compassion for each other and assume the other person also has compassion for us. It's better to assume that rather than walk into a room and assume, oh God, all these people hate me. They think I'm a loser. It's better to assume people like us. And that's something else our experts have told us.
Walk like aim to assume the best. Assume your friend who you haven't heard from in a while, who has a toddler, like still likes you and does like hearing from you, even though they are too busy to reach out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to read you a quote. Allison Davis, she's a psychotherapist, and she said in this New York Times article about friends with kids versus without, she said, the problem is we're not conditioned to put the same amount of effort into friendships as we do into romantic or familial or even professional relationships. And I think sometimes we think that if a friendship takes effort, then that's an indication it's not worth it. What have you found about being intentional and effortful in friendships?
I think that's a really good comparison. And yeah, just like a romantic relationship or getting to know your coworker, like you have to put in work and effort. And I think, I don't know if it's pop culture or society at large, but yeah, we're under the impression that like your BFF, it's effortless. You're basically just on the phone together all the time anyway. And like, that's not the case. And the same way marriage experts say, like, sometimes you still got to treat it like you're dating and like court the person. It's like that applies for lots of relationships. That applies for friends too, where, you know, they need to feel appreciated and you want to feel appreciated through actions and words. And just sort of assuming that friendship can live on the back burner isn't the best way to maintain friendship.
Yeah. And it's a shame. We do live in a world where also we prioritize romance above everything. And I will say, and parenthood, women, like I'm now getting to the age where people are not asking me constantly, are you going to have a baby? Are you going to have a baby? I think it's, and I also think culturally we're starting to shift now and realize like maybe some people who really want babies can't have babies and so on. But before that, there were constantly the questions of, do you have a husband? Do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a husband? Do you have a boyfriend? Why weren't they asking me like, do you have a squad? Do you have good friends?
Yeah.
And our society.
Do you have a BFF?
Yeah. I think it was amazing before I got married and after I got married, how I felt like society legitimized me in a way once I was married that just made me angry. I'm like, so now I'm a full person to you?
Yeah.
You didn't think I was a full person before I got married? Come on. So yeah, friendship, on the one hand, it requires lots of work, as Jolenta was just saying, and tenderness and love and good assumptions. And on the other hand, our society just treats it like it's not even second fiddle. It's the third or fourth or fifth most important thing in our lives.
And I think when we think about ourselves as parents and modeling behavior, that prioritizing friendships is a great thing to model for our children too. That, hey, this boy or girl may be everything to you right now, but are you tending your friendships? You've seen how important my friendships are to me. And modeling that for our kids is going to set them up for more success than just saying Prince rides in one day, solves all your problems, and scene. Because here's the spoiler, it doesn't actually work that way.
No. And I just think it not only is it a great thing to model for kids, it's a good thing to model for society because society should be looking at friendships as important for the health of our society, for the care of communities, for making sure that elders are not left alone dying in their apartments where nobody checks up on them. There are so many ways that modeling friendship and making sure that friendship is held in high regard makes everybody happier. Families, communities, society, everything.
Yeah.
We've been talking to Kristen Meinzer and Jolenta Greenberg. They host the podcast How to Be Fine. So we'll put the link to listen to How to Be Fine in the app where you're listening right now in the show notes for this episode. But Jolenta and Kristen, tell our listeners where else they can find you.
You can find us on Instagram at How to Be Fine Pod.
And you can also find us on patreon.com/listen to buy the book. We release new monthly episodes of ourselves living by the rules of self-help books there. Every month a new episode comes out. We have a live monthly book club there. We have the written rules of every book we've ever lived by included in there. We have over 500 posts currently in our Patreon for all of our members. And so definitely check out patreon.com/listen to buy the book also.
Awesome. You don't have to remember any of that. It's all going to be linked in the show notes. Jolenta and Kristen, thanks so much for talking to us today.
Oh,
Thank
thank you so
you.
much for having us, Margaret and Amy.
Thank you.